Hey neighbor, welcome back to Hypocrisy at its Finest. My name is John, and it's time for a review of a band you'd probably think were absolutely terrible based on the amount of hate thrown their way by critics, but no, instead it's the sophomore album The Battle at Garden's Gate by the young rockers Greta Van Fleet. You can probably tell that I'm irritated and throwing shade already, which I am, so let me do this before I start the actual review. I think the way that people treat this band is total bullshit. It seems like all anyone wants to talk about with Greta is, oh, they sound like Led Zeppelin. And okay, fine, they do. It's a fact. No one is denying that. But every artist in the entire world has their influences. Do you want a trophy for making such an astute observation? Like, damn, hope you got your concealed carry for that journalism degree you're packing. Copycats happen, but I'm just saying I'd rather get a second Led Zeppelin than a 100th Imagine Dragons clone, if you know what I mean. Anyways, after a few years of successful tours around the globe, the boys locked themselves back in the studio with a newfound inspiration from their world travels. They wanted to make album 2, and this time they did it with producer Greg Kurstin, who only continues to impress me because of his willingness to work with so many different genres in music. Almost everything about Garden's Gate is bigger and better than Peaceful Army. I had a few tracks with that one that I would come back to occasionally, but the album overall, it just felt like something was missing, but this time it feels like they ramped up the urgency without shying away from the more epic passages that they've teased before, especially in concert, but never a ton on record. Longer songs make a very obvious difference, both in runtime, the album is 63 minutes versus 45, and in terms of song structure. It's good, but not always a great thing, considering you can only marvel at the insane vocal skill of Josh Kiszka for so long before the excitement fades, but the more I listen to the record, the more I'd say the issues become less pronounced. Think of it like a shooting star. It's always great to see a shooting star, right? It's not always going to be the same feeling of wonder, like, oh my god, I'm a child again, every time you see one, but you're never annoyed at a shooting star. Maybe that's just me, but more importantly, I really think the rest of the band deserve a ton of credit for hammering down a new highway for Josh to cruise on, because a repeat of album 1, that wasn't gonna do the trick. Same style, more cinematic scope. That's what they were gunning for this time, and I really think they nailed it, even if I don't enjoy every song. The first single, My Way Soon, didn't exactly have me hyperventilating in a paper bag as I wondered what will happen next, but it was fine. Simple, breezy, I probably wouldn't change the station if it came on. However, Age of Machine was so much stronger. That single is probably one of the most important pieces to the puzzle, so without a doubt, don't just cherry pick around to start. Hear the full album, even if it is a little bit bloated. Going big works for their sound, but they may have overshot the target slightly. It's not as simple as saying, oh, the song is too long, trim the fat, considering one of the best songs on the album is also the longest by a country mile. Shout out to The Weight of Dreams. It's more of like, hey, I think this long-winded instrumental interlude could have been chopped down like a cherry tree in George Washington's backyard, then maybe it would pack a harder punch. One of the biggest elements that has them punching above their weight class, why do I keep saying punch so much? Punching above their weight class, it's because of Danny Wagner. Holy shit, he sounds like a beast behind the kit. His playing style is a lot more involved, it feels like. Not to say that he's been muted, but there's some moments that are gonna knock your socks off with how on point his fills are. Danny is charismatic throughout, and his work honestly takes a large batch of these songs from being solid to really, really strong. Josh Kiszka absolutely shines on the vocals too, which might be stating the obvious. A lot of us know Greta Van Fleet for one thing and one thing only, but I have to say this anyways. There's some spine-tingling flashes of grandeur that make this thing worth hearing just to see what the guy's gonna pull out of his back pocket. His command has only gotten better, so when you pair this up alongside the darker, winding roads blazed by his bandmates, especially his brother Jake on the guitars, who did a hell of a job, you gotta fork over the brownie points for improvement. Give it another album, and they might just shut you up entirely. Let me quickly run down some of the key tracks I felt were essential to the core experience of the battle, starting with Broken Bells. The mood feels like the changing of the seasons, like standing on the beach in the moonlight watching the ebb and flow of the tide. The supple strings add to the emotional pull, and the overall atmosphere is just straight out of another decade, which might sound cliche cliche to say when talking about this band, but it really actually transported me there. The guitar solo is really killer too. I love the fluid motion that passes by like a waterfall because it's kind of just like watching nature run its course. Stardust Chords really fucking impressed me the more listens I had. The gritty guitar guides this one towards its North Star, which is Josh laying down those truly insane vocals leading up to the chorus and during the chorus. Like when he sings that one line, "the light of the living and the dead," the range is immaculate. There's a ton of heart in this one, and it might just be the dark horse in the race. Getting lost in the longer songs might be easy to do considering almost every track on the album is over 4 or 5 minutes, but somewhere in between is the relatively short Built by Nations that stands out as one of the best Greta Van Fleet songs to date. The lead riff is groovy as all hell, Danny slays the dragon with his drumming, but somehow even better is just how hypnotizing Sam's bass was the entire song. The lyrics in the second verse really spoke to me. That line about standing naked in the breast of canyons tears at my curiosity and really plants quite the vivid seed. I'm just dazzled by the band's chemistry on Nations. Everyone is locked in for a tight thrill ride that pulls out all the stops in just under 4 minutes. Before I ramble about what I feel are probably the top 2 on the album, it wouldn't be fair to just skip over the material that isn't nearly as strong, including the lead single I already mentioned, My Way Soon. Nothing is offensively bad, or anything even close to that, but there's a few that kind of drag on, like the Barbarians towards the end of the record, which really did disappoint me coming out of the bluesy triumph Caravel. Tears of Rain felt stunted in a way, and Trip the Light fantastic, although it did have some pretty cool ideas. It ran itself in circles by the time it was all over, especially in the lyrics, and people, I know that Greta Van Fleet's lyrics are among their weaker aspects. I definitely don't come to them exclusively for that, but they've mostly gotten better. They've shown signs of improvement here. I like the connectivity between albums, between songs, there's references that date back, but tracks like this where they veer off course, they're a little bit harder to wrap your head around. Back to the good stuff, Heat Above is just electrifying any way you spin it, pure fire. Guys, I was so shocked when I heard this for the first time along with the album. Not only is it a hair-raising opener that launches the momentum forward to the sun, it's also an incredibly powerful statement by itself, and I totally get why this was picked out as a single. The organs, Josh's voice, the way he says the word bayou, the flaming hook that pierces the frontal lobe like a comet from Cupid's arrow, everything is heavenly. I have zero complaints about this song. The production is sharp and nostalgic, everyone's firing on all cylinders, let it rip and keep this in steady rotation. If that was the North Pole, then here we are at the South on The Weight of Dreams. It's crazy how this 9-minute saga sucks you in and disguises the runtime by creating so many fascinating layers, including the fork in the road fake out. It almost ends at the halfway point, but then Greta sound like when they're about to wrap it up, they fire the drums back up. We get a few hits there, and then Jake slowly warps in some stellar soloing that runs out for a few minutes. There is a lot to love about it, and it's a great way to close out this album. The battle at Garden's Gate definitely has elements that are going to feel very familiar and at times cheesy, but for me they kind of work in a good way. It hams up the nostalgia, but with new traces of darkness and insight and sincerity that just wasn't present on their debut. This record is far from perfect, but it's also far from terrible. It's way better than I expected it to be. I definitely recommend this to anyone who digs rock, or better yet, classic rock from the 60s and 70s, and I'm giving Greta Van Fleet's sophomore album a very strong 3.5 out of 5. Hey, thank you so much for watching this review. If you liked it, then press a like and maybe ring that bell once you've subscribed so you don't miss out on my other videos. You can see my first reaction to the band from years ago by tapping right here, or you can watch my review of Peaceful Army right here. All of my socials are in the link tree in the description down below or else on screen now, and I'll be back soon with more on ARTV.